Workday 2 for President Trump brought more executive actions, more meetings with business leaders, and word that a new Supreme Court nominee is only days away. The decision to jumpstart work on the Keystone XL and Dakota Access Pipeline projects is both a shot across the bow to environmentalists.
President Trump took major steps today to resurrect the Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines, another opportunity for the president to undo Obama-era actions.
We're going to renegotiate some of the terms, and if they'd like, we'll see if we can get that pipeline built. A lot of jobs, 28,000 jobs, great construction jobs.
The Twitter sphere lit up with protest from environmental groups. Earth Justice condemns President Trump's executive order on Keystone XL and Dakota Access oil pipelines, wrote one group. But from House Speaker Paul Ryan, praise. Thanks to President Trump's executive order, the Keystone Pipeline and the Dakota Access Pipeline can finally be built. It's about time. The president also signed orders to streamline the permitting and manufacturing process for pipelines and other infrastructure projects, and took steps to ensure when they are built, they're built with American steel.
We will build our own pipeline. We will build our own pipes. That's what it has to do with, like we used to in the old days.
When it comes to the Dakota Access Pipeline, we know what the tension that was there at the end of last year. We know how many thousands of people were against that pipeline being built. We also know that the U.S. Army Corps nixed the project, and there was jubilation over that, of a celebration, and we thought that this thing was over. But you know what? A lot of people, 1,000 of them, decided, we better stick around because Trump's going to be the new president and things might change. And that's exactly what went down.
On Tuesday, tribal leaders protesting the construction of the North Dakota Access Pipeline promised to fight Donald Trump's order to revive the project.
Get as many people in the photo as possible. City by city, block by block, we stand, we're standing rock. City by city, block by block, we stand, we're standing rock.
Participants of the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal are looking for ways to save the trade agreement after Donald Trump pulled America out of it. Australia's government, which vows to keep the agreement alive, has suggested that China could plug the gap. Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, was a free trade agreement between the US and 11 Pacific countries. It was expected to cover 800 million people and encompass 40% of the global economy. Originally, China was not even invited to the project, with many experts seeing it as an attempt to contain the nation's influence in the region. After Donald Trump pledged to put America first in his inauguration speech, a senior Chinese foreign ministry official hinted that Beijing may pick up the torch of global leadership if no one else does.
It's not China that's rushing to the front, but rather the front runners have stepped back, leaving the place to China. If China is required to play that leadership role, then China will assume its responsibilities.
China says that it will not compromise on its rights and interests in the South China Sea, regardless of other countries' stance.
China's position on South China Sea issue is clear and consistent. Our actions in the South China Sea are reasonable and fair. No matter what changes happen in other countries, what they say or what they want to do, China's resolve to protect its sovereignty and maritime rights in the South China Sea will not change.
Chunying was responding to Washington's recent remarks concerning its interest in the disputed region. She said that China recognizes the free navigation of vessels as long as it is in accordance with international law. The official noted that the U.S. is not a party to the South China Sea issue. China and several regional countries seeking control of trade routes are locked in a maritime dispute over the South China Sea. This has also become a source of tension between China and the U.S., with Beijing accusing Washington of meddling in regional issues and militarizing the region.
Speaking more about the new administration, President Trump's election could have a big impact on Russia, one of the world's largest economies.
A lot of people, rightly or wrongly, believe there's a pretty good chance that sanctions will be lifted. Among them, the CEO of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, with $10 billion in reserved capital under management. He is pumped up about the thought of Russia and America co-investing, citing Russia as a partner that could even help Trump with his promise to create jobs for Americans. Dmitriev says the prospect of tapping Russia's 140 million strong market could be appealing for Americans, and claims his country's economy is in solid shape despite the sanctions.
They really didn't destroy Russian economy as the hope was. Our stock market grew 50% last year. We struck a very important agreement with OPEC to stabilize oil prices. As I mentioned, we'll have a 2% GDP growth of the Russian economy this year.
Now, Kirill Dmitriev says that the weak ruble has actually been really good for Russian exports as well, but people who actually have expenses in dollars here will tell you an entirely different story. Now, in terms of some of the concerns about corruption and other problems associated often with doing business in Russia, a couple of statistics here, Jenna. The World Bank's ease of doing business ratings has put Russia at number 40 out of 190, and that is up from 51 of last year.
Russia is now China's biggest crude oil supplier, overtaking Saudi Arabia for the top spot. Russian oil exports to China surged nearly a quarter over 2016 to 1.05 million barrels per day. Saudi Arabia shipped 1.02 million barrels per day. While Saudi Arabia mainly relies on China's state oil firms as clients, Russia took advantage of a different market, China's independent refineries. Nicknamed teapots because of their smaller processing capacity, they just gained authorization to import crude oil in 2015. For them, shipments from Russia are easier to process because they come in smaller cargo sizes from a much closer distance. Russia's newfound friendship with these teapot refineries significantly increased its crude oil sales in China in 2016, and teapot refineries are expected to import even more in 2017. So it's possible Russia could maintain its #1 spot in China once again this year.
UK High Court today crushing the will of the people in a victory for the British elite.
Supreme Court has ruled the government cannot trigger the Brexit process without first receiving Parliament's approval.
The claimants argue that as a result of leaving the EU, UK law will change and legal rights enjoyed by UK residents will be lost. Accordingly, they say, the government cannot trigger Article 50 unless authorised by Parliament.
The British Secretary for Brexit says the Britons have already voted for leaving the European Union and that Brexit must not be delayed.
This House voted by 6-1 to put the decision in the hands of voters, and that bill passed the other place unopposed. So there can be no going back. The point of no return was passed on June 23rd last year. The government's also always been clear that we must leave by following the process set out in Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union. People want and expect us to get on with implementing the decision.
Davis's comments are in reaction to a court ruling which obliges the government to get a parliamentary approval before it can go ahead with the Brexit process. Davis said that the government will introduce a straightforward bill to Parliament within days to withdraw from the EU. He noted that what needs to be done is to make sure that Brexit would be in the best interest of all the people in the United Kingdom.
The Obama administration reportedly spent its final hours in power by defying heavy Republican opposition to quietly release $221 million in funding to the Palestinian Authority. Former President Barack Obama had been battling Congress to release the money for the Palestinians for some time, and his last-minute maneuver overrides holes that Congress has had in place over the past 2 years. These kinds of congressional blocks are generally respected by the executive branch, but this one wasn't legally binding since the Palestinian funding had already technically been allocated when American lawmakers gave it their initial approval as part of the 2015 and 2016 federal budgets. They later stopped it from being delivered as part of a punitive response to unilateral Palestinian efforts for membership in international organizations. According to one State Department official and several congressional aides who remain unnamed since they aren't authorized to speak to the media, the outgoing administration unexpectedly notified Congress the money was being released, just hours before Donald Trump took the oath of office. The financial package is supposed to be used to advance political and security reforms, the preparation of good governance, and the rule of law in a future Palestinian state, as well as humanitarian aid in the West Bank and Gaza. The new president and the congressional members of his Republican Party are likely to be outraged by Obama's last act.
In northwestern Syria on Tuesday, heavy fighting erupted between a powerful jihadist organization and more moderate rebel groups. The rebel infighting threatens to further weaken the opposition to the advance of President Bashar al-Assad's Syrian regime. Rebel groups who fight under the Free Syrian Army banner, some of whom have representatives attending peace talks in Kazakhstan, have accused the radical jihadist group Fateh al-Sham of launching a surprise attack on their positions west of Aleppo. Long-standing tensions between Fatah al-Sham and more moderate rebels, a number of them backed by Turkey and other states that have opposed Assad, have surfaced again since regime forces backed by Russian air power and Iranian-backed Shiite militias pushed rebels out of Aleppo last month.
Malaysian police arrest 4 people with alleged ties to a terror cell in the Philippines. Authorities say the suspects include one Filipino man, his Malaysian girlfriend, and 2 Bangladeshi men. All are allegedly connected to an Islamic State cell based in the southern Philippines. Police announced the arrest on Monday, January 23rd. According to Kyodo News, the Inspector General of Police said authorities have, quote, succeeded in crushing a new terror cell. Inspector General Khalid Abu Bakar says the group was trying to use the Malaysian state of Sabah as a transit point for terrorists. The Filipino suspect, Khalid says, was under orders to smuggle new members from Malaysia, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. The 2 Bangladeshi suspects, he notes, were some of those new recruits. Malaysia is reportedly battling an increase in terrorist activity. More than 200 people with suspected ISIS ties have been arrested there since 2013.
Around the world, Japan is reportedly reviewing the possibility of revamping its defenses amid looming diplomatic and security concerns. The Mainichi Shimbun reported Tuesday the Japanese government is seeking to create an agency to oversee all branches of its military. The Japanese daily adds Tokyo is mulling the possible deployment of a missile defense system to protect against potential provocations from China and North Korea. According to government officials quoted by the newspaper, the defense review was prompted by looming concerns over President Donald Trump's America First policy, the continued threats from Pyongyang, and the territorial conflicts over the ownership of a group of islands in the East China Sea.
Japan takes its defense to new heights, successfully launching its first ever military communication satellite. The Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, along with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, launched the Kirameki-2 satellite from JAXA's Tanegashima Space Center on Tuesday, January 24th. Currently, Japan's military uses 3 civilian satellites. The 3 X-band satellites will reportedly quadruple Japan's broadband capacity and will allow the country's military to communicate much more efficiently. Japan also plans to use them to boost its emergency response capability in the event of a natural disaster and to help keep an eye on activity from some of its neighbors like China and North Korea.
Thailand's capital is set to hold its first gay pride parade in 11 years. Phuket has hosted an event every year, but a small group of organizations is bringing pride back to Bangkok. Out BKK, the HIV Foundation, and Rainbow Sky Association are putting together the 6-day event that will feature workshops, film screenings, and, of course, the parade. An Out BKK organizer said, quote, "It's time to fly our rainbow flags high and show the world that Thailand is also progressing toward free and equal rights for everyone." In 2015, the country introduced anti-discrimination laws based on gender and sexual orientation. Some hope the Bangkok parade could pave the way for marriage equality for the LGBTQ community.
Mount Semeru, Mount Sinabung, Mount Lokan. They are all in Indonesia, home to some of the world's most active volcanoes. They pose dangers not only to the people on the ground, but also to the many planes that increasingly fly through Southeast Asia. Between July and November 2015, eruptions shut down airports at least 3 times, including the international hub in Bali. This cost Indonesia's tourism industry tens of millions of dollars. Indonesia has seen an average of 8 eruptions a year since 2014. The U.S., on the other hand, has averaged 2.5 eruptions in the same time period. So why is Indonesia so much more prone to eruptions, and what makes them so threatening? Indonesia, a sprawling nation of some 18,000 islands, sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire. That's a seismically active region on the Pacific Ocean basin that experiences frequent earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. On top of that, Indonesia has nearly 140 active volcanoes, among the world's highest. It is also the world's fourth most populous country, and its volcanoes are often closely packed on densely populated islands, so it's more likely that people will be exposed to eruptions. Based on research about the global hazards and risks of volcanoes, nearly 69 million people, or 30% of Indonesia's population, live within 30 kilometers of a volcano that has erupted in the past 10,000 years. Most fatal incidents that are caused directly by volcanic hazards fall within this distance. Much of the country's critical infrastructure, such as airports, ports, and roads, also lie close to an active volcano. At least 10 airports are within 100 kilometers of one. Indonesia also has some of the world's most hazardous volcanoes, according to researchers at the University of Bristol. Those hazards include highly explosive eruptions and lava flows. Of the 57 classified volcanoes, 12 are considered hazard level 3, the highest level. Regions of Japan, Taiwan, and South America also face similar risks.
Global sea level rising is unfolding at a stunning pace, and a new report from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association says the U.S. will find itself directly in the crosshairs. The study finds that over the coming decades, some parts of the nation's coastline will be hit harder than others. The report was co-authored with the U.S. Department of Commerce, the U.S. Geological Survey, the EPA, and the South Florida Water Management District, along with scientists from Rutgers and Columbia University. The group outlined 6 likely scenarios for sea level rising, ranging in severity from low to extreme, so that communities and the federal government can plan around those likelihoods.
A Nacogdoches surgeon is picking up the pieces after his office burned Friday night. But for all the things he lost, he's choosing to focus on what survived. Our Caleb Beams found out how he's holding on to hope and what he found in the rubble.
Dr. Chuck Page is a man without an office. On Friday, his office caught fire shortly after he noticed a popping noise.
Some computer people come look at the wiring and everything, and then we left about 5, and then we came back about 5:30, and of course, that's when kind of all chaos broke out.
Every corner you look at in the building that he has spent decades in has damage, from busted out windows to melted office equipment. It's hard to come up with words at first.
How do you express, kind of your feelings and your emotion when you're going through something like this?
But the more he looks around, the more words come to him.
I mean, it's pretty much all gone. It's just all it's like walking around in a big sewer. Does that help?
In the middle of all the destruction, there is some hope. Up these stairs, family portraits spared by the blaze, and right past them, a sign of his faith, not damaged.
Just there's things that we just don't have any kind of explanation for. We can always kind of remember these things.
And his most precious possession saved, his Bible.
You see the back of it. You can see how it's been all charred, but it's just a reminder that, the eternal things will always be there.
And while leaving the building, Page received a call about a patient.
I didn't expect you to find anything. We were calling.
Putting everything back into perspective.
As we serve other people and we begin to help other people, we realize that our problems sometimes are not as big as what we thought they were.
A Christian university in Mississippi was also hit hard by those devastating tornadoes. William Carey University in Hattiesburg suffered extensive damage, but thankfully no one was killed. A school spokesperson says nearly all of the 30 buildings on campus were damaged and about 100 vehicles were totaled. But the university president says something remarkable happened at the chapel.
We had extensive damage to our beautiful Bass Chapel on campus, but the Bible on the pulpit is left undisturbed, and it's open to Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength in times of trouble.